that it's the worldwide story round. And I give up all responsibility during the worldwide story round and pass it across to Mike Rust of Get a Word in Edgeways, who will create and keep good order. So, Mike, over to you.
Well, welcome to everybody. It's lovely to see you here from all parts of the British Isles, by the sound of it. It's lovely to see the Scots back up here again. It's I spent many times.
Have we got North Carolina?
Yeah, well, we'll get to North Carolina in a minute, but Asia, I have spent many times up in Scotland telling stories. I used to go to the Kingdom of Fife, and I called it Fifeshire once, and I got into real trouble about it. And did you say you're up in the Highlands?
Aberdeenshire.
Right, John, is that in the Highlands?
Near enough.
Near enough.
If you've got to drive there, it's a long way north.
Yeah. There's a great friend of mine in the Highlands called Bob Pegg. Yeah. And he wrote the history book of Press. And if you need any help or support, or you need someone local to there, go and see my friend Bob. He's a wonderful player. Keith, it's lovely to see Lincolnshire here. Rachel, you always speak in a funny accent. These East Anglians, you know, you need to get out more and speak the Queen's.
Oh, no, see, you've got me wrong. I'm from Derbyshire originally, so I haven't got the right accent either.
Well, it always sort of triggers into it. We have a Papa Joe, who is from North Carolina, is it, Joe? Yeah, I'm a Papa as well. So, and Jodie Fitterer. You haven't got your video on, Jodie.
Don't have my video on, but I am here and I am still in Maryland.
And you're still in Maryland. Brilliant. Okay. So I'm going to start off with just a little ghosty. Oh, Mike there. Sorry, Mike, I didn't see you there. Yeah, absolutely. Love to see you. And Rupal. Rupal?
Hi there.
Hi there. I can see a picture and a name, but I can't see you. So where are you from?
I'm from Tanzania.
Tanzania?
Yeah.
Wonderful. Can you get a video going or?
No, I'd prefer not to, but I'm here.
Okay. Are you telling stories this evening? It's an evening here.
Yes, that would be great.
Right. So what I'm going to do then, I'm going to go first. If you go second, then is it Aisha? How do you pronounce your name, Aisha? Aisha?
Is that me? I'm Elsa.
Elsa.
Yes.
Right, Elsa, would you go 3? Okay.
Yeah.
Right, so it's going to go me, Rupal, and Alicia. And then we'll make it up. Right, okay. So this is how this goes. In Herefordshire, and the tune goes like this. Now that tune's been played for 10 years in Herefordshire. It's been played for thousands. And Herefordshire is the place, and if you think of the British Isles, and you think of England and Wales, well, Herefordshire's at the bottom of the Welsh border. And it's there, and they live alongside at the bottom of what we call the Welsh Marsh. And the Welsh Marsh isn't because there were armies marching from one place to another. It's the old Saxon word for boundary. And it's the old Saxon word for a border. And it's called the Welsh Marsh, and this is where I live. But you can always tell Herefordshire because it's a good loyal land. It's a good kingly land. It's a good place where the people are loyal to our monarch, who is in a very sad place today, but that's all I'm going to say. And you can tell that by the names of the king of the towns and the villages. Well, there's King's Land in Kingsley, Earl's Land in Earlsley, and the Dukedom. And in that piece, as it goes from Hereford up to the Welsh border, it's called the Golden Valley. And it's called the Golden Valley because in the autumn, the colours all just go gold, because that's where they grow the apples to make the best cider anywhere in the world. Now, we've had various arguments about amateur cider drinkers like Taffy Thomas and one or two others, and they don't know. These people who come from Somerset and from Kent, and even from Norfolk, I hear they make cider over there nowadays. And Derbyshire, they've got no chance of making, because this is the stuff, the nectar that Jesus himself drinks when he goes into heaven on a Sunday night and sits in the golden harp and has a pint of something to sup. Herefordshire cider. And all these towns and villages are still there. Like I said, they go back an awful long way, and they will go back to the times of the Saxons. And the Saxons, they were a bit like us, but they just weren't. Maybe the science was a bit better nowadays, but as people, they were the same. They like telling stories and poems. They like riddles, and they like pubs. They definitely like pubs. And when they built a village, they had a church, and they had a pub. And the other two sides of the village green would be their own houses, and the village green was where the people could gather, especially in the summer times as the sun came down. But in the winter times, they go into the pub. And it used to be on a Sunday, and 4 farmers used to come in, and they'd play a game called flat. Now, flat is an old game. I've played this myself. It's a cross between throwing dice and dominoes and chess. And it's played on a board, and you throw the dice and you move the pieces around, and it's a bit like bridge. You need 4 people to make it. You can play one-on-one if you want to, but 4 people can play flash. And there's none of this men only, because when the women start, they beat all the old farmers. It's one of these games that everybody used to join in, and for years and years, everybody just played flat. There's leagues. One village will go and play another one pub will go another. The youngsters are taught around the kitchen tables, and when they're old enough to go to the pub, they can play. But these 4 farmers, they used to always go on a Sunday, and they'd been to school together, the village school. And as they grew into their 20s and 30s, it became for their time to run the farm, and their fathers would fade a little bit, and the children that were coming up would be the 3rd generation. Just as it is to this day, it was done then. And they'd all sat and played for it. And suddenly, it was great fun, and they all looked forward to a Sunday, the end of one week and beginning of another, a Sunday night. Well, it was sad to say, but before he reached 40, one of those farmers woke up dead. They couldn't find him anywhere, and he went up to his bed, and there he was dead, and they were sad, and there was the biggest funeral you had seen for ages. The whole village was there. They didn't know what had killed him, but they knew somebody had. And they spoke, at the eulogies, they spoke about him. What a good lad he was, what a good horseman he was, what a good archer he was, what a good man he was, what a good husband he was, what a good father he was. And when he got to the very end, they said, what a good flat player he was. And they buried him with much sorrow, with great ceremony. Well, a couple of weeks later, the 3 of them, they went into the pub, and they sat down, and they couldn't find anybody to play the 4th, because you really need the 4th one. You can play dead man's flat in the same way as bridge, but it's not quite the same. So what they did was they said, I'll tell you what, let's just quietly have a pint of cider. And so they did. And it was just as the April was passing into May, they sat in the pub and they had 2 pints of Herefordshire cider, which I'd like to tell everybody who doesn't know, they give you in a pewter mug or a pottery mug with a black bottom. So you can't see through it and you can't see into it because it's green and it's got little bits floating around in it, and it tastes like nectar. And at the end of April, they drank 2 pints each and went home. Well, when it got to May, they got to 2.5 pints. And when they got to June, they did 3 pints. A great celebration this was to have 3 pints and walk home. Well, as the year turned, they got to be more and to be more. And finally it came to Christmas Eve. And that Christmas Eve, they cracked it. They worked on it all through the autumn, and they had some cheese and they had some bread. And they had all sorts of things. But that Christmas Eve, they drank a gallon each. And they walked home. And there was great talk in the village that time. Everybody was talking about this, to drink a gallon of the stuff and walk home. Wow, that was some good going. And through the dark times of January and February, they came round to March again, and they've been drinking a gallon every Sunday night. Well, that Sunday, when it came to the anniversary of their friend dying that week, they went into the pub and they had themselves a gallon of cider and a bread and cheese supper. And what they did was they took a loaf of bread and they cut the end of it. You put your hand in the loaf of bread and you take the middle out. You put a chunk of cheese in it, and then you start chopping it down on top. And then you put pickle on top of that. And then you put another slice of bread on top of that. And that is a proper cheese supper, cheese and bread supper. And that's what they did. And then they started talking about their old friend again. What a good man he was, what a good friend he was, what a good husband he was, what a good father he was, what a good friend he was, what a good flat player he was. Well, when they mentioned flat, they got to talking about how they'd missed the game. And something must have come to them, because they all decided to walk out of the pub and go into the churchyard and sit round his grave and have a game of dead man's flat. Now, we all know it can get a bit chilly this time of the year. You'll go outside. I was talking to Alicia a moment ago. It's snowing up in Scotland, and it's been snowing here today. But they went and they sat outside. Well, we think that's what happened. And they must have got cold. Well, someone must have decided it was warm in the church, because they dug their friend up and they took the coffin and they took that into the church and they propped that up against the altar and they opened it up and they sat round the front of the altar, and there were 4 hands and the dice and the board in the middle. Well, that's what they found the next morning anyway. But there were 3 guys they couldn't find. They couldn't find them anywhere, and to this day, they've never found them. But sometimes in April, if you go up into the Golden Valley, it's good loyal land to the kings and the monarchs of Ireland. But there's King's Land and King's Leave, Earl's Land and Earl's Leave, and there's a dukedom. And there's churches, and by the church there's a pub, and by the pub there's a village green, and by the church there's a graveyard. And sometimes on an April evening, if you go and have a pint of cider in one of those pubs, and just as you're coming out, as you're walking past the churchyard, 3 ghostly figures will come to you and say, "Do you play flat? And if you do, would you care to join us? And if you're me, you don't go."
Oh, Mike, that was lovely. It
Yeah,
helps. If you think of the AI as an E, you might do better with the pronunciation of Elsa's name.
Elsa, yes. They've got funny ways of spelling stuff. But Elsa, anyway, right. So I'm going to go to RuPaul next. RuPaul?
Yeah, thanks, Mike.
Right, I hope I get your name right. And then we're going to Elsa. Right, RuPaul, you carry on.
Thank you for that story. I'll remember to say no if I ever see these ghostly figures.
You get yourself over to the UK here, and I'll take you there. Okay?
Great, thank you. Okay, so my story comes from Mexico. And in many storytelling traditions, we have a call and answer before we start. So I'd like you all to unmute yourself. And when I say crick, you say crack. When I say crick, you say crack. Ready? And crick.
Crack.
Crick.
Crack.
Crick.
Crack.
Once upon a time, a long, long time ago, on top of an old, old hill, there was an old, old house. And in that old, old house, there lived an old, old woman with her old, old cat. The only thing that wasn't old was the beautiful golden pear tree in her garden. Oh, how she loved that pear tree. Her best friend had given it to her, and she had a particular fondness for that friend. And so that pear tree was close to her life. Every single day, she would go out there, she would polish the leaves, she would talk to the tree, and in return, the tree gave her the most beautiful, golden, delicious pears that you have ever seen or tasted in your life. Now, the old woman would have been very happy with her old cat and her beautiful pear tree, except for the village boys. Every single day, they would scamper up that hill. They would climb onto her beautiful golden pear tree. They would shake it until all the pears fell down. They would grab the pears and they would run off with their mouths stained with pear juice as she ran after them. And then they would look behind them and say, Auntie Misery, you can't catch us. You can't catch us. And the poor old woman, huffing and puffing, would finally go back home, really feeling sad. Now, this continued for a couple of months and then a year. And then one night, it was a dark and rainy night, and the old woman heard a knock on her door. She went to open the door, and there stood a stranger. Ma'am, can you give me food and lodging for the night? For it is cold and I am hungry. Of course, my kind sir, please come in, she said, for she had a very kind heart. And so she brought him in and she gave him food and ale, and she picked some pears and she made him the most delicious pear tart that he had ever tasted. And then she made him a bed by the fire, and there he spent the night, feeling very comfortable indeed. The next morning, after having a good breakfast, the stranger was ready to leave. And at the door, he said to her, I am a magician, and for your kindness, I would like to grant you one wish. What would you like? And the old woman leaned close to him and whispered in his ear, and he smiled and said, so be it. And then he was gone. And that day, the old woman stood at her window and she looked outside at her beautiful pear tree, its leaves swaying in the wind, the golden pears hanging there just ready to be picked. When up the hill came scampering the little scamps, and they all climbed onto her golden, beautiful pear tree, and they waited. They waited for her to chase them, and she didn't. She just stood at the door with a cup of tea and watched them. And she smiled. And they looked at her and they said, Auntie Misery, taunting her and teasing her. But she just smiled and sipped her tea. And they thought there was something wrong. But hey, as long as they had the pears, they didn't care. So they scampered all over the tree, picking the pears, throwing them onto the ground. And then they tried to get down and they got stuck. Yes, they were stuck to that tree like they had been glued on. And now they got scared. Please, please let us go. Please let us go, they shouted. And Auntie Misery, sipping her tea, just smiled and laughed and giggled. And soon it started to come to evening. And the little boys and one little girl said, please let us go. Our parents are waiting for us. And she said, do you promise never to come back up this hill and never to pick my pears again? And they said, we do, please let us go. And so she said, pear tree, let them go. And so the pear tree did, and they fell down one by one and scampered down that hill, never to be seen again. And the old woman lived happily with her cat and her beautiful golden pear tree until one night. It was a dark and stormy night, the darkest and the stormiest that had ever been seen in that village. And once again, there was a knock at that door. And when she opened that door, it was a stranger. But this was no ordinary stranger, for he was tall and dark, covered in shadow. And in his hand, he held a scythe. And he said, I am death, and I have come to take you, for it is time to go. Now, Auntie Misery wasn't really ready to leave yet. She still had so many pears to eat and so many strokes for her cat and so much life to live. So she said, no, no, wait. Yes, of course, I'll come with you. But, we'll get hungry and thirsty on the way. So why don't you go and pick some pears for our journey? And Death looked at her and he was a little bit annoyed because he had a lot of work to do. And he said, well, fine, just go and pick some pears and then we can be off. And she said, look at me. I am old and I am so tired and I'm hunched over. How do you expect me to climb that pear tree? Why don't you go and pick us some pears and make sure you reach right up on top so we get some really juicy pears for the journey? And so Death agreed, and he climbed up that tree and he went further and further, higher into the branches. And then he picked all these pears. And when he tried to come down, he couldn't. He was stuck, just like glue. And how he swore and he yelled and he screamed. And Auntie Misery just stood at her door, laughing and giggling and just having so much fun watching Death trying to get himself down. And days and weeks went by, and every day Death would try something new. In the beginning, he screamed and he yelled, and finally he begged and he cajoled, and nothing worked. Auntie Misery would not let him go. Now months went past, and finally a year, and all the people who made their living from Death were starting to suffer. The priests and the coffin makers and the grave diggers, and one by one, they came to visit Auntie Misery and they said, please let Death go, because we can't live unless he is free. And she refused. And then one day, her best friend, the one who had given her the pear tree, who had gifted her this beautiful tree, came to meet her, slowly hobbling up that hill in so much pain. And she said, my dear, please, it is time for me to leave. And I am in so much pain and I cannot go, for my friend Death is stuck in the tree. Please let him go. And so Auntie Misery went to Death and she said, I will let you go on the condition that you will leave me well alone. You will never take me with you. And he happily agreed. And so she said, pear tree, let him go. And down fell Death, a little bit, worse for wear, but he quickly picked himself up, and her friend rushed to Death, and together they embraced, and he took her in his arms and they went off. And Auntie Misery lived on and on and on. And that's why they say that wherever there is death, misery will always follow. And that is my story.
Wow, thank you very much. That was really lovely. It's a good story, well told. And it's,
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Alicia. I'm still getting it wrong. I'll try and say with a Scottish accent in a moment, so I'll get me bagpipes out. Anyway, tell us a bit more about yourself. It's the first time you and I have crossed paths to each other. So you live in Aberdeenshire.
Yeah, hello, I'm Ailsa. I live in Aberdeenshire. I'm in my final year of high school at the moment, and I'm training to be a storyteller. So
Who are you training with?
it's the Storytelling Apprenticeship, which is run by the Scottish Storytelling Forum. So Janice Mackay runs that.
So do you know Donald Smith?
Yes, I do. He's amazing.
Right, when you see him next, tell him I was asking after. So, right, I'm looking forward to the story.
Okay. I'm going to tell you a story that happened when my great-great-grandfather's great-great-grandfather was still just a little boy. And at that time, so very, very long ago, there was a crofter, a farmer, who lived in a little bit of land just between a loch and the mountains. And he lived alone. His parents had died a wee while back, and he'd never married, so it was just him and his horse. And he loved his horse. It was a wee bit of company for him to keep him happy when he was all alone on his farm. And, well, it helped him around the farm and did the ploughing and the harvesting, and oh, he loved that horse. And when the autumn came and the harvest was taken in that year, and when there was snow starting to fall on the ground, just as it is today, the horse began to take sick. Oh, and the crofter, he tried everything he could. He tried everything he could think of. He called in the local wise woman, the local witch, and she tried some charms, she tried some incantations, tried some potions, but just nothing seemed to work. And before the shortest day of the year was out, the horse had died. And the crofter was sad about this because he'd lost the only bit of company he had, but more than that, he'd lost his livelihood. What was he going to do next year when it was time to plough the fields? He couldn't do it by himself, and he couldn't afford to buy another horse or rent a horse from a friend. There was just nothing he could do. And he grew sadder and sadder and more listless as the days went on. And one day, when he was just full of gloom and couldn't think of a way out of this, he decided to take his fishing rod and head down to the loch, down to the lake, and see if he could do some fishing and think of some way to get out of this. And he went down and fished. He was quite alone at the loch.
Shane. It's timed up.
He was quite alone at the loch because none of the other villagers ever ventured down there. They all said, around their fires late at night, that a kelpie lived deep in the water. Some people say that a kelpie is a great black stallion with red burning eyes that rises from the water and drags men down to their watery graves. Others say that he's a beautiful young girl or a beautiful young boy that smells slightly of seaweed when you kiss them, and as soon as you have, you're entranced and wonder of your own free will down into the water, never to be seen again. But the crofter wasn't a superstitious man. He did not care what the villagers said, and so he sat by the edge of the water and he fished. And soon enough, he was getting fish into his net, and he saw the wise woman, the old witch who'd helped him with his horse, walking down the path towards him. And because he was a polite young man, he took a bannock, which is a sort of pancake, a sort of little bready thing that you cook on a griddle. He took one out of his pocket and he offered her half, and they sat by the lake, just nibbling and munching for a wee while. And when they'd finished, and the old lady rose to go, she took the plaid, the shawl from around her shoulders, and passed it to him. "Remember," she said, "cloth can cover more than skin." And now the crofter thought that she was probably a little bit mad, but he knew it was good practice never to ignore the words of a wise woman, so he put the plaidie in the pocket of his great coat and thanked her, and they went their separate ways. Winter dragged on, and one night when he couldn't sleep, and he was sitting outside his cottage looking at the stars, he saw the old woman again. And he invited her in, and they shared a story and a poem and a riddle and a song, and it was the wee hours of the morning when finally she rose to go. "Thank you for your hospitality," she said, and she took a wee bit of salt, a wee pouch of salt from her pocket, and she handed it to the young man. "Remember, salt can kill as well as cure." The young man definitely thought the old woman was off a rocker now, but he knew never to ignore the words of a wise woman, so he thanked her and put it in the pocket of his great coat, and they went their separate ways. It was almost spring, and he still hadn't found a way out of his dilemma. He didn't know what to do. He didn't have a horse. He couldn't plough the fields by himself. He couldn't work out a way to feed himself next year. But you might as well keep yourself busy. So he set about getting the firewood and sorting the peats for the next year, and he decided to take a big bundle down to the old wise woman in her little cottage by the lake. And when he did, and when he was piling the peats and the firewood up beside her fire, she said, thank you for your kindness, and let me give you a little thing in return. And from a hook that was in the wall, she took down a bridle. It must have once been beautiful. There was the remains of embroidery that was starting to fray and fade. And the iron bit must once have been shining and strong, but it was now rusted and starting to corrode a wee bit. But it must once have been a fine, expensive thing. But it wasn't up to much now. And the old woman passed it to him and said, remember, iron can make more than a pot. The young man was starting to regret having struck up this friendship with this dotty old woman who kept giving him stuff. But nevertheless, he thanked her and went about his way. And when it came to the time when he was supposed to have started planting, when all the other crops all around the lake, all up and down the valley, had all started taking out their horses and ploughing their farrows, he just couldn't sleep. He tossed and he turned and he turned and he tossed, but just nothing was working. So he decided to go for a wander down to the edge of the lake, and he slipped on his greatcoat and walked down beneath the stars to see if he could think of something, or at least get a good night's sleep afterwards. And it was a windy night. The wind was blowing from the north, and all the trees were bowing down before it. And he watched as the waves were whipped up on the lake, and as he watched, in the light of the moon, the waves began to change direction, started to fight against the wind. And he looked closer, and from the water, slowly, rose a creature, a great black stallion that seemed to be made out of the water itself, with great shining red eyes. And it rode towards him, galloping towards him, and he felt this urge, this burning desire to leap upon its back and just ride far away from here. But he remembered the stories of the villagers. He remembered the tales of the men who went missing, and then he remembered the words of the wise woman. So, when the Kelpie, the great water horse, came near him, he took the plaidie from the pocket of his greatcoat, and he flung it across the horse's back and leapt upon it, making sure that none of his legs touched the horse's flank. And when the horse realised what had happened, realised that he wasn't stuck, because if you sit on a horse or a Kelpie with your bare skin, you're fused to it, you can't move and you're dragged down. When the horse realised this hadn't happened, it started to buck and rear desperately, trying to throw the man off. And the crofter grabbed hold of the mane with his 2 fists. But beneath his fists, the great mane started to twist and turn and became snakes, great shining snakes that spat and hissed and twisted and twirled up in his face. And he remembered the words of the wise woman, and he took the salt from his pocket and threw it at the mane. And suddenly it was just hair beneath his fingers. Oh, the horse was mad now. It was mad and raging, rushing back towards the lake. And he took the bit from his pocket, the great bridle, and he forced it brutally through the Kelpie's mouth. And suddenly, all the fight seemed to leave the animal, and it was tame and placid and just allowed itself to be walked back to the cottage. And all that year, that horse worked 3, 4, 5 times as hard and as fast as any other horse anybody had ever seen. And he even managed to do a bit of work for some of the other farmers and get a bit of extra coin. And it was just the best year he had ever had. But when autumn came around again, when the first flakes of snow began to fall, he knew what he had to do. And he took the Kelpie back down to the edge of the loch and took that bridle from between its teeth and watched as once again it dived back into the water. For although a Kelpie can be caged for a while, it can never truly be tame. Thank you.
It was lovely, it really was. So,
Wonderful,
Rachel, if
wonderful.
you go next, that would be great.
Awesome.
When if you're on your storytelling, just unmute yourself for a second, Aisha. Again, just unmute yourself again. So you're doing an apprenticeship through the Scottish Storytelling Centre.
Yes, I am.
So who's your mentor?
I haven't got a mentor yet, so it's a sort of 3-year scheme. So I'm 2 years in at the moment.
Right.
And then I'm going to be moving down to Edinburgh next year for university, so I'll probably get a mentor then.
Right. Okay. Have you been south of the border yet?
I went to Newcastle once, but that was to get on the ferry for Holland.
That doesn't count.
Yeah, I've been there the whole time.
Right.
I've only
Okay.
been to Edinburgh like 5 times.
Right. Can you put your email in the chat so we can get hold of it? Do you know, or have you heard of the name Amy Douglas?
Yes, I did a night for Blast actually. I told that same story at Blast. I probably should have picked a different story.
Right. Okay, that's fine. As long as Amy knows who you are. Right, that's fine. Rachel, is that okay if you go next? After Rachel, we'll go to Keith. And we need to speak, Elsa, at some point. Rachel, can you unmute yourself?
Hello. Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to.
Right, Keith next, and then we'll go to Papa Joe, if that's okay. Okay. Okay, mate.
This is a bit different. This is more of a story that I've written, so bear with me. And so it's all about a bear who's a bit wobbly. Anyway, and it's in chapters. So here we go. Chapter 1, Ernest Bear. Ernest Bear falls off his donkey again. Oh, bother, he shouts as he bangs his head on a sign. The headline on the newsagent's sign reads, "Knights needed to kill a dragon." This is my chance. If I kill the dragon, I will be the best knight ever. Ada Cat is his furry, ginger, stripy assistant. She rubs his head with her paw. Try this recipe, it's delicious. Chocolate and dragon shaped. Next day, Ernest dresses in shiny armor and puts on his glasses. Ada brings his sword. Ernest climbs on Idris, his donkey, and charges straight into a tree. He bangs his nose on the branch and smash, his glasses break. Ernest screws up his eyes and peers ahead, but splash, splosh, he lands in the river. Ada heaves Ernest out of the river. Drip, drip, drip. Idris sneezes as he stomps, with Ernest's broken glasses in his teeth. Idris sighs as Ernest climbs on his back again. Idris charges so fast he misses the path altogether. Help, help, shouts Ernest. He drops his sword, holds on with his arms around Idris's neck. They jump a fence. Ernest lands in a patch of nettles. Oh, ouch, ouch, my bum hurts. Ada finds some dock leaves for the stings and hauls Ernest out of the nettles. Next, she picks up the sword and runs after Idris. Meanwhile, Ernest stomps away up the path out of the town. I'm a bit clumsy now and then. No one understands me. It's not fair, he grumbles to himself. Ernest walks across a bridge. It has holes burnt into the wood. He takes one small step after another. He looks through the holes, and there, far below, the river roars over jagged rocks. Ernest holds onto the charred rope. The bridge sways from side to side. A wooden slat breaks. I don't feel very brave now, he says in a small voice. I wish Ada were here. Chapter 2, Gertrude. Snore, rumble, snore. Gertrude the dragon curls up in the sunshine. Her cave is high up in the mountains and she can see the bridge. Her golden wings shine like stained glass. A small dragon with pink and orange stripes on her nose, and she lives alone among the herbs and flowers she grows in her stony garden. She cooks basil pancakes for tea and drinks from the waterfall behind her. Gertrude yawns, stretches her wings. She sees Ernest on the wooden bridge and flies closer. The knight's face is red. He hooks his foot over a wooden slat and slips. Help, help, he cries. Oops, says Gertrude, I will rescue him, as she burns another hole in the wood. Ernest feels the dragon's large, scaly body beneath him. He lies flat, holds tight onto her scales and shivers with fear. I will be eaten, he says in a small voice. Chapter 3, A Muddle. Gertrude flops down by her cave and Ernest falls on the floor exhausted. There is a clatter by the cave entrance and Ada canters up into the cave on Idris. Psst! Ernest, over here, hisses Ada. I have brought your sword to kill the dragon. Thank goodness, Ada. Give me your sword, whispers Ernest. Kill me, says Gertrude. Why would you do that? Because you are scary and fiery, says Ada in a loud voice. Oh no, says Gertrude and laughs. Don't be silly. I'm a vegan. I only eat plants. All this way with a heavy sword for nothing, mutters Ada and twitches her tail. I'm exhausted. I'm confused. You're not going to eat me, says Ernest. Not at all, says Gertrude. Tears of relief roll down Ernest's face. Gertrude is so kind, she cries huge tears, and Ada begins to snivel, and a puddle of tears gets so big that Gertrude stands in it. Slurp, slurp. Gertrude licks Ernest's face and knocks him into the puddle. Ada starts to giggle. Ernest laughs, and Gertrude guffaws until they collapse in a huge heap in the puddle. A muddle in a puddle, shouts Ada, and they all laugh again. Chapter 4, Friends. I'm hungry after all that, says Gertrude. Gertrude's breath lights a fire to warm them up, and they cook herb pancakes for tea. After tea, they sit down by a warm fire and chat. What do you do, Gertrude asks Ernest. I write recipes for the Wild Times and I work in my garden. I am a bit lonely. I don't have many friends. We like you very much, says Ada and Ernest together. We can be your friends. Really, thank you so much. Gertrude sheds another tear down her stripy nose. Is that your chocolate cake recipe in the Wild Times? Asked Ada. Yes, it is delicious, but it tastes better if you share it. I don't think the Wild Times is a very friendly paper, says Ada. I know, says Gertrude. They don't like dragons much. I was lucky to get the job. What about you, Ernest? I am clumsy, said Ernest, and I'm a bit stubborn, you know. I don't ever ask for help. Yes, Ada says, he is stubborn. It gives the other person a gift if you ask for help, says Gertrude. Oh, I see, says Ernest. So it's okay to ask for help. You got it, said Ada. Chapter 5, Smoke Rings. Can you help me be less clumsy? Ernest asked Gertrude. Listen to my breath, says Gertrude. It will help. Gertrude takes a deep breath and blows smoke rings out of her nose. At first, small pink smoke rings, but then purple, gold, and silver and green. Ernest feels Ernest's slow heartbeat in his body. The smoke rings are rainbow colours. They drift over Ernest and roll down his body from the top of his head to his toes. Pop, pop, pop. Ernest is back in shape. All his frustrations roll out of his toes. Gertrude smiles at him with huge teeth. You're all done now, she says. I don't want to be a knight anymore, says Ernest. That's a relief, says Ada. Can you teach me to bake pancakes, Gertrude? Of course, says Gertrude. Would you like to come and stay with us, Gertrude? You won't feel lonely then. Yes, please, says Gertrude. Chapter 6, Cooking at Home. The next day, Gertrude follows Ada and Ernest over the bridge to the town. Gertrude teaches Ada and Ernest how to bake herb pancakes. Ernest pours in flour and sugar, salt and water. Next, he climbs on a stool to find his herbs. He wobbles and wobbles on the stool and then knocks over a bag of ginger. And he tips it all in. The ginger spills into the pancake mix. Whoops, says Ernest, that's not right. Never mind, said Gertrude. Stir it all in. When they're cooked, Ada takes a bite and says, these pancakes are the most delicious pancakes I have ever tasted. I am a baker. That's who I am, says Ernest with a big smile. You are indeed, said Gertrude. Gertrude loves her friends and is happy. Gertrude owns a shop and bakes cakes, breads, and pancakes. She lights the oven every day with her fiery breath and writes recipes for the Dragon News every week. Her last headline read, Ernest Bear wins top pancake award. The end.
Well done, lovely. That's great. The next on my list, I've got Papa Joe. Where are you, Papa Joe? There he is. Well, we're into the land of beards tonight. My mind's
Well,
John's got one. You've got the longest, I must admit, my friend.
well, I don't shave it much, you know.
I have split ends and breakfast in mine. So.
Oh, you gotta do that cleaning it regularly. That's an important part of having a beard, isn't it? Some people braid it up, get it out of the way. Sometimes I hook it down underneath my larynx. So
yeah,
it's good to be here today. I finally made it out.
Yeah, it's lovely to have you here. And you're from Tennessee?
No, I'm mostly from New England, but I'm a traveling storyteller, and right now I am in Tennessee. No, actually in North Carolina. Don't confuse me. I'm easily confused on where I might be.
Right, well, you're very welcome for you to be here. So every other Sunday we do this. Okay.
Yeah, I've been watching you on the web, putting out your posts. This was the first time I managed to make it. I'll try to do it more often. Okay. But the world is opening back up again slowly, and I really am hoping to participate in that. So right. I don't know how much time I'll have online, but I have some time now. So, you know, I've been telling stories my whole life. I learned a lot of the stories from my mother, who was a storyteller before me, and I thought maybe there would be appropriate introduction to share one of her stories with you. So I'd like to start with once upon a time, a long time ago and far away. There was a little boy, and his name was Pocahontas. Now, Pocahontas lived with his mama, but on the other side of the field, on the other side of the forest, on the other side of the swamp lived Pocahontas' auntie. And Pocahontas, he loved to visit his auntie. Every time he did, she gave him something. Now, one day when Pocahontas went to visit his auntie, she gave him a chocolate cake. Oh, Pocahontas, he loved chocolate cake, so he held it close to him as he walked through that swamp. And he held it close to him as he walked through the forest. And he held it close to him as he walked through the field. But by the time he got home, he had crushed that chocolate cake into a crumble. Now his mama saw him coming, and she said, Pocahontas, what have you got there? He said, the chocolate cake that Auntie gave me, Mommy. She said, Pocahontas, that is not the way to bring home chocolate cake. Now, the way to bring home chocolate cake is to take off your hat, put the cake in your hat, put the hat on your head, and head for home. Well, Pocahontas, they always said the same thing. You could say this too if you'd like. You go, okay, Mommy, I'll remember that. I'll do it next time. I promise. But the next time Pocahontas went to visit his auntie, do you think she gave him chocolate cake? She gave him
I think we've got a connection problem. I thought it was
just tenterhooks. Was it ice cream? Who knows?
I'm sure he'll come back, and if he does, we'll get him back on. So, Mike, I've just texted you. So, if you could go now, I'll count to 10. If he hasn't come back in, then we'll go on that, and we'll take it from there. So, on my mark, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. No. Okay. Well, we'll go with you, Mike. And when Papa Joe comes back, he might well start from the beginning, but that's okay. Okay, Mike.
Okay.
And after Mike, I have Jody, Manuela, and then Janet, if that's okay. Jody, are you telling tonight?
No, I'm not. Jody is not.
Jody's
you.
not. Okay, so we'll go from Mike to, is it Manuela? Manuela? Yeah. And then Janet after that, and Shane, as you'll be the last, but very much not the least. Okay. Okay, then, Mike.
Okay. Now, you probably already know, but you may not, that Thursday, the 13th of May, is Leprechaun Day. I don't know if it's International Leprechaun Day, World Leprechaun, but it's Leprechaun Day. So I've got a leprechaun story that I'm trying to get off Pat by the 13th of May, but he's being a bit awkward, old Pat. So I'll try it tonight, and if I get it wrong, I'm sorry. And if I get it right, you're in for a treat. Okay. Now, I don't know if you know Connor, you probably don't, but Connor was always a bright and a happy young man, full of the joys of whatever season it was. One day, he was walking along. He had his face as long as a year in lockdown. It looked so miserable. And he wasn't watching where he was going. He tripped up and he fell over. He didn't have a bald head, that's just me. He tripped up and he fell over. And as he landed, he threw his hands out and something was wriggling under one of them. And he looked, and it was a leprechaun. And Connor said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I try not to do the Irish accent because I can't do the Irish accent. He said, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to catch you." And the leprechaun says, Well, Connor, you have caught me. So I'm in a quandary now. Either I have to tell you where my crock of gold is, or I have to trick you out of it. And Connor said, "I don't want your gold." He said, "Well, I can't help that. The rules are rules." And Connor said, "Yeah, but I don't, it won't help. I don't want your gold." And the leprechaun said, "Well, why don't you tell me what's got you so upset?" And Connor said, "Well, do you know Siobhan?" And leprechaun, "Oh, do I know Siobhan? Oh, she is the beautiful girl and such a lovely temper and so kind. Yes, I know Siobhan." And Connor said, "Well, Siobhan and I are in love." And the leprechaun says, "Well, why aren't you a happy man then?" He said, "Well, Siobhan's old fella, he loves her as much as I do. And he set me a challenge last year. He said, if I could bring him a guinea a year and a day from that day, he would let me marry Siobhan." He said, "And you know what? That's tomorrow." And I was there. I was on my way a day early and I had a guinea. So, but then I had the misfortune to find a green silk ribbon. The leprechaun said, "Well, why is that a misfortune?" "Well, I'll tell you." So I found this ribbon and I was walking along to Siobhan's, and as I got to the village, there was a fair. And there was traders, and this peddler had this very beautiful silk purse. And it's the right green look. And I thought, that'll go so well with the ribbon. I'll buy that for Siobhan. He said, so I bought the purse, and then I saw he had some rings, and there was this beautiful emerald ring. I thought, I'll buy that for Siobhan. She's going to be so happy with all this stuff. It's all right for her. It's perfect. So I got to Siobhan's father's house, and I said to him, "Look, there you go. I saved up a guinea." And he said, "Oh, I've spent some on the way. All I've got left is this silver shilling." And her father said, "Well, you haven't saved up a guinea then?" He said, "Well, I have saved up a guinea. I've just spent some of it on my way here to show you and to win Siobhan's hand in marriage." And I said, No. A guinea spent is not a guinea saved." And so Connor said, and he said, "No." And Connor said, "That's why I'm miserable." And the leprechaun says, "Well, if you take my treasure, that's much more than a guinea. If I can't trick you out of it, you take it and you're there." And he said, No. I don't want that. If you could see your way clear to just giving me a guinea, or actually even a pound, because I've still got a silver shilling in the purse." And the leprechaun said, "I can't do that. The great lords of the fairy have laid down the rules, you know, the she who must be obeyed have said, all my treasure or a trick. And so Connor said, well, I'm sorry, then I'll take your treasure, because then at least I get to marry Siobhan. And the leprechaun says, right, come with me then. And he takes him along, and there's a field of wheat. And the leprechaun says to him, that stalk there, that's where you dig there, you'll find my crock of gold. And Connor says, oh, thank you. And he's about to go away because I haven't got a shovel. I'll go get one. And the leprechaun says, I know, that stalk there. And Connor says, oh, hang on. If I go, I won't know which stalk it is. And the leprechaun said, that's a problem, isn't it? And then the leprechaun said, I tell you what, put your shilling in your purse, put your purse on your ribbon, tie the ribbon on the stalk, and then you'll know which it is. And Carla said, yeah, but what would stop you moving your crock of gold when I've gone? And the leprechaun said, all right, I promise I won't move my crock of gold. And God said, you can't fool me. What's to stop you taking my ribbon off when I'm gone? And the leprechaun said, well, all right, I promise you, I won't take your ribbon off that stalk of wheat. There you go, I've got there in the end. And so Connor's trying to think, is there a trick here? I can't see a trick. And he said, what if you just cut down the stalk of wheat and throw it away, and I won't know quite where the ribbon came from? And the leprechaun said, look, I won't do anything to the wheat, okay? Trust me. I won't do anything to your ribbon. You can trust me, I'm a leprechaun. I know the accent isn't right, but I am. And Connor says, all right then, in the end. And he goes away and he gets a shovel. And he comes back. Lo and behold, every stalk of wheat in the field has got a ribbon with a purse with a silver shilling in it. And the leprechaun says, I've tricked you good, haven't I? And Connor said, well, if it's fairy magic, I can just wait till the morning and at least I'll get my own stuff back. And the leprechaun said, oh, no, it's not fairy magic. Every ribbon's real, every purse is real, every shilling is real, and they're all yours. And that's my trick. And that's the end.
Right, thanks,
Awesome,
Mike. That's
awesome.
lovely. All these years I've been doing this, I didn't know that there was a leprechaun day. I'll have to get hold of Pat Ryan and find out why he didn't tell me that. Right, now I've got a batting order to finish up. Now, my batting order is going to be like this. Manuela, you go next. After Manuela, we're going to Janet. Papa Joe, if you would go after Janet, and then start from the beginning, my friend, as you got dropped out. So don't come in halfway through. Start from the beginning and do the whole story again. Okay? Then we'll go to Keith, and then we'll go to Shan. Okay, is that okay with everybody? So we're going over to Manuela. Now, am I pronouncing your name right? Because I'm getting somebody else's wrong this evening.
It's Manuela. If you remember Faulty Towers, it's like Manuel, but with an A on the end.
No, you don't look like him.
Remember Manuel?
Yeah. You're a lot prettier than he is, I'll tell you. Right, so we'll go to you.
Thank
and
you.
after that is Janet. Okay.
So, sorry, I need my story hat just to get into the mood. See me wear this before. I just seem not to be able to tell stories without it. It's just part of me now. I'm a children's storyteller. So I've chosen a story that I'm sure adults will enjoy too. And I hope it's John Rowe. I'm not going to tell you where.
Whatever I did, whatever. It was someone else who looked like me, and I wasn't there at the time.
I've changed the story quite a bit, but you may recognise it. So I'll leave that till the end to see if you can recognise it. This story is not from Italy, where I am currently calling in from, and I've been based here for almost 25 years now. But it's from Newcastle, which it's probably from Scotland, but it was passed to me in Newcastle, because that's where my mum and my family still live, and that's where I'm originally from. So I'm a northerner, globalized in Italy. And storytelling. Yeah, I've sort of lost the accent, but it'll come back. especially with this story.
Okay,
So
then.
this story is about a little white cat. Here she is. You can see a picture of her here. So once upon a time, not twice, not 3 times, but once upon a time, there was a little cat. And this little cat had 6 brothers and sisters. Now they were all black, and her mother and her father was black too. And when I say black, I mean really black, like this. Of course, the little white cat didn't know she was black. She was white. She thought she was black like her brothers and sisters. And they grew and they grew, and she turned into a beautiful adult cat. And she started to think what she could do in her life. So she thought for a minute or 2, and she thought, shall I be a farmer's cat? No, I don't think that's for me. I know I could be a musician cat. No. What could I be? What job could this little white cat have? Oh, she thought, I know, I can be a teacher's cat. No, don't think that would work. What cat do you think? What do you think? What job do you think the little white cat should go for? Well, after some thought, shall I tell you? After some thought, she said, yes, that's it. I've decided I'm going to be a witch's cat. So she was all excited and went to her mum. Mum, I've decided to be a witch's cat. Oh, that's lovely, dear. Well, you do take care and stay safe, and make sure you come back and visit now and again. I will, Mum, I will. And so the cat left, and she walked and she walked and she walked and she walked till she reached a witch's house. She meowed to attract attention. Meow. And the witch opened her window. Who's that? Hello, witch. Have you got a cat? I pardon my Scottish accent. And the witch looked down and says, no, I haven't. I'm your cat. I'm your cat. No, you're not. You're white. Witches' cats are black. You can't be my cat. Go away. And so the poor cat was sad, very sad. But she didn't give up. And she walked and she walked and she walked till she found another witch's cat, a witch's house. And she meowed, meow, meow. And the witch opened the window. Who's that? It's me. Hello, witch. Have you got a cat? Have you got a cat? The witch looked. No, I haven't. I am your cat. I am your cat. You? Oh no, you're white. Witches' cats are black. Oh dear. The little poor white cat was so sad now, and she was getting hungry, and it was cold, but still she walked and she walked and she walked and she walked till she saw another house. She noticed a man It was a chimney sweep. He was having his lunch. He was eating sandwiches and biscuits. And he looked at the little white cat. Hello, little white cat. What's the matter? What's the matter with you? And the little white cat said, well, I haven't got a job, and I haven't got any money, and I haven't got any food. I'm really sad. So the chimney sweep said, here, have some of my sandwich. And here, have a biscuit too. And so the little white cat, meow, was feeling already better and stronger too. And the little white cat saw the chimney sweep's bag, and there was black soot in it. So the little white cat put her paw in it. It was black. Oh, so she put her leg in it, pulled it out. It was black. Ooh, so she jumped in the bag and she danced about and she jumped up and down and she jumped out. The chimney sweep saw the cat and said, oh dear, you're black. You're really black. Am I really? Oh, please say I'm black. Am I really black? Oh, yes, you're definitely black. Oh, that's good because I want to be a witch's cat. Well, said the chimney sweep, it's your lucky day, isn't it? This cottage is a witch's cottage. She's sitting round the front. Go and talk to her. So that's what the little white black cat did. She was black now. So she walked and she walked round the house. And there was the witch, and she was sitting in her rocking chair with her eyes closed. And the little white black cat now meowed and rubbed her tail up the witch's legs. Meow. And the witch, who's that? It's me. Have you got a cat, Mrs. Witch? No, I haven't got a cat. I'm a cat, said the little black cat. Oh, that's nice. So come, jump on my lap. The cat couldn't believe it. She was so happy. She jumped and leaped on the witch's lap and she started to purr, 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 purr. And she gently pressed her paws against the witch's legs. The old witch said, you're a lucky cat. Oh, what a beautiful cat you are. What a pity. I can't see you because I'm blind. And that's the end of the story.
Well, I must admit, I didn't do that ending.
Now, John,
well.
who's that story by? A good friend of yours.
Right. So we went.
I haven't the faintest idea, Manuela.
We went to Manuel. We said Janet next, and then Papa Joe. So Janet, we're going to you next. So yeah, that's it. Lovely to see you here again, my friend.
Hello, hello. I have been trying for a year to travel out of the UK, like everybody else.
You picked a bad year.
I did. And the place I want to go, the country I want to go to is Greece. I want to go to Greece because my sister lives there and her family, and they have an olive farm there. And I'm usually there at some time between November and Easter because of the olive harvest. The olive harvest, the harvesting we usually do between November and February. And then it's the pressing. And then up until Easter, it's the general taking care of the trees. And haven't done any of it. And I thought, oh, this is a good year, 2021, because Easter, I know we're just coming out of the Easter holiday, but Easter in Greece follows the Orthodox pattern. It follows the pattern on the Julian calendar. It follows, it must be after the Jewish Passover, and it must be after the first full moon of the spring equinox. So here I am with my fingers crossed, and I see that it's going to be May the 2nd. And then I read that if I go to Greece anytime between the 14th of May, I will have to self-isolate for a fortnight. So I am just about to miss Greece this year. Not to worry, there are stories which link us with Greece. I've chosen one that I think you will all know because it comes under Aesop's fables. Now, every Greek knows that Athena gifted the olive tree to the Greeks. And every Greek and everybody who has ever read the tale knows that you must never, never, ever chop down an olive tree without a very good reason, for fear of annoying the gods. You must know this if you live in Greece. You must treat the olive tree with the greatest reverence. So why was it then that the woodcutter was up the tree with his axe? Well, quite simple. It would have been about this time of year when we do the pruning. Now the pruning, well, you just cut off anything that is not necessary, but particularly anything that is dead. And the woodcutter was working hard. It's quite windy sometimes at this time of year. It's quite hot as well. So maybe his hands were sticky, or maybe he lost balance. But whatever happened, his axe slipped. It slipped from his hand as he's up in the tree and crashed down onto the ground, smacked against a stone, and tumbled into a deep, dark pool beside him. Well, there he sat beside the pool, having clambered down from the tree, utterly, totally desolate. For that was his tool. That was his tool for caring for the trees that day. And if he did not finish pruning the trees, he would not be paid at all that day. He raised his chin and looked upwards, and unspoken wished for help from the gods. It didn't matter that it was unspoken, because Zeus knows. Zeus knows everything. And he knew that the woodcutter needed help, but Zeus is not entirely kind. He decided he would help, and he decided he would send Hermes to help. But there would be a test. So as Hermes walked towards the woodcutter, and the woodcutter saw him, the woodcutter asked, "What is your problem?" I suspect that the woodcutter was a little dubious when he saw a god walking towards him, especially a god, Hermes, son of Zeus. But he was desperate, and he explained that he had lost his axe in the pool and he could not retrieve it. And Hermes said, "I'll help." He reached down into that deep, dark pool and he pulled out an axe and presented it in the open hands of the woodcutter. And the woodcutter looked down and saw the axe and said, "This is a beautiful axe. It is as golden as the sun, but it is not my axe." And he handed it back to Hermes, who took it and threw it to the base of Athena's olive tree. Hermes reached down again into the pool, and this time another axe, and he handed it to the open hands of the woodcutter. who looked down and said, "This is a beautiful axe. It is silver. It is as silver as the stars in the sky. It is not my axe." I turned it to Hermes, who took it and threw it at the base of the tree, Athena's olive tree. For Hermes is the half-brother of Athena, and so he knew where to throw away his tested axe. And then he reached down into the pool and drew out an axe with a smooth handle, an axe with a sharp metal blade. And he placed it in the open hands of the woodcutter, who said, "This is my axe. Thank you." And as Hermes walked away, he climbed the tree and continued with his work. It's not difficult to imagine how the story spread, especially in that little bottom part of Greece where the fingers are, down in Methone, just south of Pylos, yes, in the Mani, over the hills. And the story very quickly spread. And it reached the ears of another woodcutter, one who thought, "I could make my fortune. I could do this. I could get the gods, give me an advantage." And he ferreted at the back of his woodshed, and he found his old axe, the one with the knotted handle, the one with the blunt blade. And he carried it to the dark pool and he threw it in. And he sat beside the pool and waited. Not too long. And as he anticipated, Hermes walked towards him and asked, "You need help?" "I do," he said. "My axe is in the pool and I cannot reach it." You see? Hermes reached down into that pool, and he pulled out an axe, which he placed in the new woodcutter's hands. And the woodcutter looked at it and saw that it had a knotted, twisted handle and a blunt blade, and he said, "This isn't my axe." "No," said Hermes, and he took it away, and he threw it to one side, to the base of the olive tree. He reached down again, and he pulled out another axe, and he placed it in the hands of the woodcutter. And the woodcutter looked at it and said, "Well, this silver axe is very handsome, but silver is a soft metal. It will not do the job of pruning olive trees." So Hermes took the axe and he threw it to the base of the olive tree. And then he reached right down into the deepest part of the pool, and he pulled out a golden axe. And as the golden axe was pulled out, that woodcutter grabbed it and said, "This is my axe." Before he realized what had happened, Hermes had grabbed that axe and he had struck the back of the woodcutter's head, and the woodcutter fell down upon the ground, senseless. And some in Greece say he was senseless for a day, and some say for a year, and some say forever. Of course, it's just Aesop's fable, but the Greeks love that. And if you ask them, what's the moral of that tale? Someone is bound to say, "Well, honesty is the best policy." That's what Alexa said. What Christos said was, well, got his just desserts, didn't he? The Greeks are very strong on just desserts. His own silly fault, really. He shouldn't have been so greedy. True. But what did Thanasis say when I asked him? And with all seriousness, he says, "The moral of this story is just respect the gods." And he left it at that. So I leave it with you, and you can decide for yourselves. Thank you.
We have
Thank
another
you, Janet.
to the ending of that, Janet. And when we prune the apple trees in Herefordshire, which is what we do called to make the sides. We call that giving the trees a haircut.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, everybody says the trees are getting a haircut. And the moral of your story, as they say from Herefordshire, is don't be a woodcutter because you never get a good living at it.
Nowhere in the world do you.
Yeah, absolutely. When the woodcutter turns up in the story, he's always the poorest of the poor, and he's living
That's
on a
right.
crust of bread
Always.
and gets a
Yeah,
proper job
always.
and earns some money. Yeah. So Papa Joe,
Shonelly's grandma used to say, when Shonelly used to tell woodcutter stories, she used to say, "He's a woodcutter. He lives in the middle of the forest. He's poor. The man is an idiot."
yes, yeah, that's
Well,
right. Yeah,
If you are pruning the olive trees, it's pretty grim actually, because the wood is quite hard, and you wouldn't believe it, but it's also quite spiky. It tears at your skin. You can't really believe that something that can produce such beautiful, gentle oil can be hideous when you're in the tree. It's horrible. But that was what a woodcutter does, and you need a good sharp blade to deal with it.
so back in the day, you had to sit on the front of a bucket of a tractor with a chainsaw. Nowadays, we train the trees to grow smaller. All the trees don't grow that big, so you can stand, so you don't even have to leave the ground. You can just, the trees are only about 4 foot high nowadays. It's taken us years to go on that short, but we've managed to do it. Okay.
That's the cider apples, is it?
Cider apples. Yeah, Herefordshire cider Bulmers, you'd know it. That's one of them, as you know. Yeah.
Right. Well, I have pear trees in my garden, and we had a story about pear trees, and I have never ever been able to reach the top of the pear trees. They grow so tall. So
there is another way of doing it, and I have actually done that. You wear stilts. Yeah, no,
okay.
I've actually done that. But the ground has to be hard. If the ground is soft, you end up on your bum a lot. Okay. Right, Papa Joe, we'll come to you. Don't start from where you left off. Start from the beginning, my friend. Okay.
Well, I get that.
Keith, you're next. Okay. Keith.
So I will start from the beginning. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Awesome. So once upon a time, a long time ago and far away, there was a little boy, and his name was Pocahontas. Now, Pocahontas lived with his mother, but on the other side of the field, on the other side of the forest, on the other side of the swamp, lived Pocahontas' auntie. Now, Pocahontas, he loved to go visit his auntie, and every time he did, she'd give him something. Perhaps that's why he liked to visit her so much. I don't know, maybe you would feel the same way, but he did love visiting his auntie. Now, one day when he went to visit his auntie, she gave him a chocolate cake. And Pocahontas, he loved chocolate cake. So he held it close to him as he walked through the swamp. He held it close to him as he walked through the forest. He held it close to him as he walked through the fields. And by the time he got home, all that was left was a crumb ball. His mother saw him coming, and she said, "Pocahontas, what have you got there?" He said, "Chocolate cake that Auntie gave me, Mommy." She said, "Pocahontas, that is not the way to bring home chocolate cake. Now, the way to bring home chocolate cake is to take off your hat, put the cake in your hat, put the hat on your head, and head for home." Well, Pocahontas, he always answered his mommy the same way, so you could do this too. First, he'd rub his hands together and he'd say, "Okay, Mommy, I'll remember that. I'll do it next time. I promise." But the next time Pocahontas went to his auntie's house, do you think she gave him chocolate cake? It was chocolate ice cream. And no sooner did Pocahontas step out of his auntie's house, but he remembered what his mommy said. So he took off his hat, put the ice cream in his hat, and put the hat on his head, and started for home. Unfortunately, that was a really hot day, and as he walked through the swamp, the ice cream began to melt down his face, down the back of his neck. As he walked through the forest. It ran down his shirt into his pants. And as he walked through the fields, it ran down his legs into his shoes. By the time he got home, he was covered from head to toe in chocolate ice cream. Of course, his mother saw him coming. She said, "Pokemon Deuce, what's that all over you?" He said, "Chocolate ice cream, Mommy." She said, "Pokemandus, that is not the way to bring home chocolate ice cream. The way to bring home chocolate ice cream is to take off your hat and put the ice cream into your hat, but don't put it on your head. Take it down to a cool stream instead, where you cool it in the water, cool it in the water, cool it in the water, and then bring it straight home." Well, Pokemandus, he always said the same thing to his mother. First he rubbed his hands together, he went, "Okay, Mommy, I'll remember that. I'll do it next time. I promise." Well, the next time Pokemandus went to his auntie's house, do you suppose she gave him chocolate ice cream? It was the cutest, the sweetest little puppy dog. Oh. And no sooner had Pokemandus stepped out of his auntie's house, but he remembered what his mommy said. And he took off his hat, stuffed the puppy dog into the hat, took it down to a stream where he cooled it in the water, cooled it in the water, cooled it in the water. And then he headed for home. Well, as he walked through the swamp, that poor puppy dog, oh, it was so cold. The puppy dog caught the cold. As he walked through the forest, it began sniffling and sneezing. Little puppy dog sneezes, "Gachoo, gachoo." And as he walked through the fields, that puppy dog was sneezing so loud. "Achoo!" His mother heard him coming, and you know what she said? "Pokemandus, what have you got now? Cute little puppy dog, Mommy." She said, "Pokemandus, that is not the way to bring home a puppy dog. The way to bring home a puppy dog is to reach into your pocket, pull out a string, tie the string around the puppy dog's neck, and Pokemandus, you have to tie it gently. Put the dog down on the ground, he'll follow you home." And Pokemandus said, "Okay, Mommy, I'll remember that. I'll do it next time. I promise." But the next time Pokemandus went to his auntie's house, do you think she gave him a puppy dog? Pepperoni pizza. And no sooner did he step out of his auntie's house, but he remembered what his mommy said, reached into his pocket, pulled out a string, tied it around the pizza very gently, set it down on the ground, had it follow him home. And as he walked through the swamp, well, let's just say the pizza stopped being crusty. And as he walked to the forest, the sticks and the branches scraped away the pepperoni, the cheese, the red sauce. Walking through the fields, the blades of grass took care of the rest, and by the time he got home, there was nothing left on the end of the string. And of course, his mother saw him coming and said, "Pokemandus, what have you got now?" "Pizza, Mommy." She said, "Pokemandus, that is not the way to bring home pizza. I'm going to go to your auntie's house right now, and I'm going to tell her not to give you any more things because you don't know how to take care of them. But while I'm gone, now, Pokemandus, do you see how I set all these pies on the stairs? Pokemandus, I just baked all those pies. They're out there to cool now. I want you to be very careful how you step around those pies. Do you understand me, Pokemandus?" And Pokemandus said, "Okay, Mommy, I'll remember that. I'll do it. I promise." And Pokemandus' mommy went to visit his auntie, and while she was gone, do you suppose Pokemandus was very careful how he stepped around those pies? Of course he was. He promised. He very carefully stepped around. He very carefully stepped around. He very carefully stepped around the middle of each pie. And do you know what his mother said when she got home? Pocamandus! And that's the story of Pocamandus. I hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you very much. We got there in the end. That was brilliant. Well told. Thank you very much. Okay. So we're going to go to Keith and then we're going to go to Shane. Manuela has got to go, which is fine because the time is going on. So it's lovely to see you and I hope you come back next time. Okay. And I just love that picture of that talking tree behind you. That's a lovely picture, that tree. I love that picture. Right. So we're going to go to Keith, then we're going to go to Shane. Okay.
Okay. Hello, everyone, and enjoyed your stories. That's brilliant. Last Sunday, I was all prepared to tell this story because it was Easter Sunday, and so you've got it for tonight. It's in the time of the Roman Empire, when all the countries around the Mediterranean Sea had been conquered by the Romans and were occupied, and this included Judah. Now, the capital of Judah, Jerusalem, there was a man called Joseph, and he was from Arimathea. He was a good man, an honest man, an upright man. And he was part of the Jewish council, the Sanhedrin. And in his absence one day, the council decided that we're going to hand Jesus of Nazareth over to the Roman authorities to be crucified on the cross. Now, he didn't agree with this. So he was looking forward to the kingdom of God coming. He's looking forward to the Messiah to rule the earth. Now, normally when the bodies were on the cross and maybe taken down, they were just left on the side to rot, or maybe put in a pauper's grave. But very bravely, Joseph went to Pontius Pilate, the governor at the time, and asked for the body of Jesus. And Pilate said, well, is Jesus of Nazareth dead already? And he sent one of his officers over to the crucifixion site, to Golgotha, to check. And the officer returned and said, yes, Jesus of Nazareth is dead. And so Joseph went with Nicodemus and his servants, and they took down the body of Jesus and they wrapped it in a linen cloth. Now, not far from Golgotha, just outside the city walls, was a garden which was owned by Joseph. And previously it had the part of the rock face hewn out to make a tomb. And it also, in the process of this, it actually had it extended. And so when they took the body of Jesus to this tomb, they was able to lay it in there. And the reason why it had been extended is because Jesus was somewhat taller than Joseph. They laid it in the tomb and they rolled the stone in front of it. Now, not far away in the garden, there were women. And they'd come down with Jesus from the Galilee. And they were staying in Jerusalem. Their names were Martha. No, sorry, there was, I've got it. Oh, sorry, there's Mary from Magdalene. There was Joanna and Mary, the mother of James. And they were in the garden. They watched where the body was laid, making a note of where it was. Now, it was the Friday, and the Sabbath starts at dusk on the Friday. But they went back to their place of residence where they were staying, and they made some, got some myrrh and aloes in preparation to treat the body of Jesus. But because it was the Sabbath at dusk, they rested on the Sabbath day according to the law of Moses. Now, very early on the Sunday morning, the first day of the week, they went to the tomb and they was wondering who was going to roll the stone from the entrance so they could get inside. But to their surprise, the stone had already been rolled away. Then they went inside and they wondered whether it just didn't know what to think because there was nobody there. And suddenly there was two men appeared in bright shining clothes, bright as lightning. And one of them said to the women, after they bowed down, and one of them said to the women, "Why are you looking for someone who's alive in the place of the dead? Jesus is not here. He is risen. Don't you remember him telling you when you were in the Galilee that the Son of Man will be handed over to evil men and then be crucified and killed on the cross, but God would raise him on the third day?" And the women remembered what Jesus had told them. The men disappeared, and the women, they rushed off through the streets to find the 11 apostles. There's only 11 left, the apostles, the disciples, because Judas, in remorse, had already hung himself and killed himself. He committed suicide in remorse about betraying Jesus. And the women went to the 11 and said that the tomb was empty and that Jesus was raised from the dead. But they didn't believe the women. They just laughed at them and thought they were silly. But Peter, he ran through the streets and into the garden, and he looked down into the tomb, and there was nobody there, just the grave clothes. And so Peter, he wandered away, wondering what had happened.
I love a good religious story, or a faith story, as we call them nowadays. It's that they're always worth listening to. I always love listening to. So before we go to Shane, right, has everybody told a story or done something that wanted to do? Because if I've missed anybody out, I'm sorry, but I don't think I have. So we're going to go, as I said before, Shane, you are the last this time, but very much not least. And it's lovely to be in your company again. So if you care to unmute yourself, and I think you have the final story, unless you're absolutely desperate to do something, John, which normally you and I, we have a way of doing these things. And it's
right.
Lovely.
I'll next time, in 2 weeks' time, I'll do a story. But right now, I'm full of. It's like cream cakes, you know. You can only have so many stories, and we've had a fantastic selection of stories tonight.
It's been lovely, and it's always lovely. And you know, I don't leave you out on purpose. I just check with your carers first. Okay. Papa Joe thinks that's really funny. Shane, we'll come to you.
Thank you. I'm sort of tossing up stories, which ones to tell, and I'll tell one that's not too long, I think, because it's, as you say, it's been a full evening. But there was a theme of trees, so I thought I might add to that. So this is a story about a young man that was out on a very hot day, walking down a long, dusty track in a hot land somewhere far away. And he came across this tree, and he looked up and he looked at it, and it was hanging full of this beautiful fruit. It was kind of a bit green, a bit yellow, and a bit red, and you might think it's an apple, but it's not. It was a mango tree. Now, he didn't know it was a mango tree. It's the first mango tree he'd ever come across. He just could see it was a tree, and it was full of beautiful fruit. And he was hungry. He was also thirsty. Well, he climbed up this mango tree, and he pulled off a mango, and he bit into it, and not only was it food, but the juice that came out of it, it ran all the way down his beard, dripped off the end all the way down his arm, dripped off his elbow. But it was, gorgeous it was. Well, he grabbed another one and he munched and munched on this mango, and he grabbed the third one and he munched and munched and he had his fill. He was sated. And then he looked down. Oh, I'm a bit higher up the tree than I thought I was, and I'm scared. I don't like heights. And he looked down and he thought, I don't know how to get out of the tree. And he called out, "Help me! Please, somebody help me! Help me!" Well, all the villagers were in the fields working the fields. No one heard him. He was up there all day. The sun was beating down on him. He thought, how am I going to get out of this tree? And the day went on. And you know when you're waiting for something to happen, the time just drags on. Well, that's what it was like for this young. It just was dragging on. And he thought, oh, when is someone going to come? Well, he had to wait until the end of the working day. And the working day in those days was a long day. Well, eventually those villagers had finished for the day. And they came back. And he was scared. Help me, please, help me. And the villagers heard him. And a few of the men went across. What seemed to be the problem? I can't get down, he said. I'm too scared to get down. He said, can you come and get me down, please? So the men climbed on each other's shoulders and they reached up, but he was a long way up in the tree. They said, we can't reach you. We can't reach you. But wait there. Don't go anywhere. He said, I'm not going anywhere, don't worry. And the two men went down and they went back to the village as fast as they possibly could. And they grabbed a ladder. And they kind of went back with the ladder, put the ladder up against a tree, climbed up the ladder, but it was quite a short ladder, and they couldn't reach. They said, we still can't reach you. Wait there, don't go anywhere. He said, I'm not going anywhere. He said, I'm not going anywhere. So they took the ladder down. They went back to the village. They got a rope. They went back, and they threw this rope up. Well, the rope wasn't long enough either. He was a long way up this tree and the rope was not long enough. I thought, whatever are we going to do? Well, there was so much commotion and calling and whatever. All the villagers were gathered there now because they thought, well, this is, not much happens in this village. We're stuck in the middle of nowhere and this is entertaining, this is. So they were just all gathered there watching and I thought, how is he going to get down? The sun was setting. I thought, how is he going to get down? And they were some were suggesting that he jumps, and some were saying, well, perhaps we'll come back in the morning, and all manner of things were being said. Well, right at the back of the crowd came a very old man. He had a long old robe and a stick, and he just stood at the back of the crowd, just looking up. And then one of the villagers noticed him and said, "Oh, you don't know anything about how to get someone down out of a tree, do you?" I think I do. I think I do. And the villagers said, make way, someone knows what to do. And they parted like the Red Sea. And the old man, he kind of shuffled up to the tree. And he looked up. I'll get you down in a minute, my boy, he said. And he, from under his coat, he got out this golden rope. And he threw it up. Catch it! And the young man, he caught hold of it. And the old man said, now tie it round your waist. So he kind of tied it round his waist and he did a knot. And he said, have you done your best knot? He said, oh, I have. He said, now hold on to the rope. So he held on to the rope. Are you ready? I'm ready. Are you sure you're ready? I'm sure I'm ready. And with that, he pulled on the rope and he pulled the young man straight out the tree while he hit the ground so hard he broke both legs and one arm. And all the villagers went, I thought you said you knew what you were doing. The old man said, let me think. Now, did I pull someone out of a tree or was it a well? And that's the story of the man stuck in the tree. Thank you.
Great story to finish on, Shane.
Thank you.
Shane, you bugger. Yeah.
It was definitely the well.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to do this, and I thoroughly look forward to it, and it's really good fun to do. And all this stuff up is it's all come forward, and suddenly there's a big festival going on in Marrakesh in February next year, which I thoroughly intend to drive an old Land Rover to if I get the chance.
Yeah, well, I'm going to be waiting there, and I better get a mechanic ready.
Yeah, Papa Joe will fill you in on that. Right, so we'll be here in a fortnight's time, isn't it, John?
Yeah. I'm just getting the book of words out now, so that'll be Sunday the 25th. Tomorrow, what stuff we got next Sunday? we got an Elsa. It's a bit. I'm getting as bad as Mike on this. Elsa will be these. We're up in your end of the woods because next Sunday is Jackie and Phil together, and probably Pauline's coming. Pauline's coming on in the middle to do a ballad or two. So so we're looking at Doric storytelling next Sunday. But tomorrow we've got 5 poets on from East Anglia, because we have to Shane and stuff. We have to have a bit of East Anglia around, and then and that's at 6 o'clock. All these are at 6 o'clock UK time. But at 5 o'clock on Tuesdays, every Tuesday, and there are some among us who can go to both this and that and blow everyone away wherever they go. But we've got our young 18 and under tellers. Hello, and and that's just all these are at 6 o'clock. Oh, hold on. I'm talking to myself here. I'm on an echo. So that's Tuesday, and next Friday we've got the wonderful Georgiana from Romania doing stories for children. So Ham, what did you hold up there, Anne?
Wonderful.
Oh, he's been doing pictures. Oh, that's
beautiful, beautiful.
I recognise myself.
Right. Where was the one of me? Come on, Anton. Where was the one of me?
Friday, we've got wonderful Georgiana from Romania doing stories for children.
Oh, you've got it. You're live streaming there. You are.
Yeah, you're live streaming it, John. That's all.
No, it's because loads of because all the or we're all unmuted. But
yeah,
I've been sketching you all evening.
Yeah. Nice one. Round of applause for Anne then.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. As I was saying, that since I've spoken to you, since all this thing about the festival in Marrakesh has come out, so, and there was something to do with the there's his photographs, pictures again. There we go. I'm going to put you on gallery view, so I can put you on speaker view. See where you are. No, that's not working. And say something. Just say something. There she is. I've spoken to you since all this thing about the festival in Marrakesh. That's me speaking. The whole world's coming into chaos. Anyway, so we'll be here in a fortnight's time doing the whole thing all over again. Elsha, if you could just stay for a second before we go. I've got permission from the World Storytelling Capital to keep going for just 2 minutes. So there's just something I'd like to ask you. Thank you very much for being here. And Janet and Shane and Anne, where were you? Papa Joe, please come back and do some more. Mike, Jodie Fitzgerald, I haven't seen you. Rupal, and John is going. We're going to get John to tell a story. 2 weeks' time, I promise you, he's been dipping out enough, and he's a wonderful storyteller. And he's going to tell you a favourite story.
My Bagsy mossy coat.
Yeah.
Okay. Ali, thank you for driving the bus down or the magic carpet down. I was down in Marrakesh, and Ali's sort of keeping us all under control, technically speaking.
Yeah, there hasn't been any problems. It's been a good job. Well done again, Ali. Thank you very much. If I could just hold you for 2 minutes. Okay.
Yeah, welcome, my friends. Thank you so much.
Okay, mate. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
There we go.
Ali, thank you for driving the bus down or the magic carpet down. I was down in Marrakesh, and Ali's sort of keeping us all
Right, now,
Enjoyed that, Shane.
Do you know Debbie Campbell? You need to unmute yourself. Okay, mate.
Hello.
Hello there. Do you know David Campbell?
No, I don't know Debbie.
David.
David. Oh no, yeah, I do know David Campbell. Walks around with a kilt.
That's him.
Yeah,
he's
I know.
really old.
Hugs. He's
Yeah.
Yeah, I shared a fine bottle of whiskey with him and Donald Nelson.
We're just old. He's really old. Okay. Have you stayed with him? Have you been to visit with him?
Hello. No. met him when I was telling at the Scottish International Storytelling Festival in 2018 when I was 16. So that's the last time I've seen him. But
well, if you he lives in Edinburgh, and you really do need to go and find him and have a chat to him. If you need an introduction, I'm very happy to do that for you. Right? Did you know Stanley when you were growing up? Did you know Stanley Robinson?
met him. Oh, I can hear myself double backed.
Yeah, Anne, could you mute yourself, please, Anne, because you're feeding back through to us. So, Anne, thank you very much. Okay, sorry, Aisha.
I think he died in 2006. Was it?
I can't remember how long.
Duncan died in 2007, didn't he? So
Stanley died after. Yeah.
I know Heather Yule and her mother Barbara recorded lots and lots, and I've heard him tell on Tober and Dulcas, the Rich's website. So in a way, like I've heard him tell stories, but
right. Well, Stanley stayed in the very house I'm sat in lots of times, and we used to go to a thing called Whitby Folk Week. Whitby Folk Week is in August every year. It's a week-long festival in just south of Newcastle in Yorkshire. It's north from here and south from you. Okay, they very much have a project called the Evolving Tradition. As the tradition evolves, and they're always looking for apprentices and things. And what you get down there is free tickets and free camping. You don't get much of a fee, but you get to meet all the storytellers that are there for a week. Now, you've emailed me and you sent me your email, and I emailed you back at some point. I need to speak to you in the week. Could you get back to me and we'll set up a Zoom meeting?
Yeah, of course. That would be amazing. Thank you so much.
Elsa's going to be our children's storyteller on the 14th of May.
14th of May. Right, I'll need to know these links because people from Whitby will need to listen to you. But I'm very much sure that they would invite you down to be part of their evolving tradition. And Whitby Folk Week is of the British and Irish Isles, is how they call it. So that is all of the British and Irish Isles. So it's all the islands, all of Ireland, the north and the south, which is why they always say it like that. Okay. So I'll email you. We need to have a chat on Zoom. Julio is down in Marrakesh wanting me to finish talking now.
That's Ali. Julia's in Romania. Ali's in Marrakesh.
Well, Ali's in Marrakesh. So I've emailed you. Would you email me back and we'll set up a Zoom meeting? We'll have a chat about it. Okay.
Yes, I will. Thank you so much.
No, that's wonderful. Okay, Papa Joe, make sure you're not late next week. Okay, 2 weeks time. English time.
No promises, but Elsa, you're awesome, and don't even think about not taking the help that people are offering you right now. You go ahead and enjoy that, and if you ever need anything, just give me a shout. I'd be honored to help you also. Au revoir.
Thank you so much. Everyone's
yeah, absolutely.
You're very welcome.
Out of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people I can see here, there's one young, good-looking, and talented.
Without the beard. Without the beard.
I wish you wouldn't talk about me that way, Mike.
I never do, John. I never did, mate. See you, thanks. And thanks, Ali, for your help, mate. I'll be gone now. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Ali.